So,
Hi, so I'm here with Victor. He had some feedback about boards. We discussed an issue, and now he's going to show me how he works with boards and what the gaps are for him.
Yeah, so hello everyone. So how we work is that this is a planning issue actually I just created today, as you can see, and I struggled even today with our boards. If you look through it, in the planning issue, there are no issues actually. Sometimes we link when it's very specific in the goals section, but the whole idea here is that I want to speak about the goals and then we just put the issues behind those goals. So it's not, and I'm not willing to edit markdown tables. It's just stupid. So what we have in the issue is a link to the planning board. What I do here, on a monthly basis, I have to update the label to match the next candidate one. I started to think about that, okay, I might assign issues to milestones in the future and then just use that instead of a candidate label. The issue with that would be that then once the milestone starts, every issue is active, even though I don't want that. Mm-hmm. So that's why I use the candidate label. And then once I'm here, the first issue that I run into once we started to use this workflow is that if let's say we are discussing this issue in a team meeting for whatever reason, and we decided this should be a deliverable, we go down at the deliverable label. Where will it appear? Now, okay, we don't have anything in deliverable yet because it's a planning board, but like I have no idea where, or we are ready for development. It will just appear somewhere in that column. Might be the first, but actually I prioritize this column. I know that this should be the first item. And then changing something on a separate screen actually just messes up my prioritization immediately. So this was issue number one that I noticed. Now so the whole team.
There's two things there actually, right? Like one is having to switch context to edit, right? That's problem number one, that you have to like open it in a new window.
More or less.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying, but then
that's not really annoying because what the use case here wouldn't be that I'm not starting from board, but I'm starting from anywhere else. So we are just discussing this issue. This is where I'm at. And I'm not even thinking about the board. I'm not even thinking that this will mess up my prioritization. And that is the issue. Because if I am here and I know that, okay, I want to make it deliverable, I just move it to the right spot and we are done. So that's not an issue. That's fine. I can do that.
So is it more about update? The board doesn't update automatically? Is that more of the...
It's not even that, because seriously, like just imagine that like on Slack, support sends you an issue that or whatever, and asks that, okay, you know that was prioritized for a long time, will it reach finally the milestone? You start discussing it on Slack with the team, everybody's agreed that actually it's well refined, it could actually even be accepted as deliverable. So somebody from Slack opens this issue and adds a deliverable label. There was no discussion about the board.
I see.
And next day you are like, okay, let's now discuss what fits the milestone, and then we open the board. Let's say that it was just ready for development, and then that's the first issue. So we move it to deliverable, but that shouldn't be the first issue.
I understand.
And that's why what I did just last month. Initially, this was an open column, and now you can say this is actually the group configure column, and the whole board is filtered for the configure label. So all the issues appear here. Everything that was on the board is on the first column as well. And this way I know the prioritization relatively quickly. But it took us a long time to figure this trick because initially this was an open column simply. What is way more annoying though, I mean, not very much, because when this happens, when this prioritization happens, it's extremely annoying. So seriously, it happened that...
So your preference would be that would your preference be that there's more control over who can apply basically a label, or like what would that ideal look like?
My idea would be that when somebody applies a label, it should either become the first or the last item in the column, depending whether I move it to the left or the right on the board. So I told you this whole story. Of course, this is what you should cut off once it goes to development, but I told you my wishes. So I'm because when I move it forward, I want it to be the last item, but when I move it backwards, it should be the first. If I look at the board.
I think eventually this would be solved by having like actual statuses that are in a order, right? Because it is really difficult to achieve something like this with labels, because this is your board in your view, right? But someone else may have a board order that's completely different.
I 100% agree with you. Definitely. As you asked what I want, I just said that. I don't expect.
No. I'm thinking of it, but thanks. This is helpful.
Yeah. The other thing, which is
one
very annoying.
And like in the board, you like having this sort of like full view somewhere where you can access basically like more the full picture. Like that's essentially what you've done with this like group configure column, right?
It not really. I did it because I had to. So if everything works fine, then just having an open column here is perfect, because what I'm really needing is, okay, like these are deliverables, these are ready for development, that's fine. I don't need the overall view.
Okay.
Sometimes, okay, let's speak about the management of this board first. So what is extremely annoying, and I think I spend way more time on it than not this word, because that's the best way I have today, but what I would love to spend is moving issues around. So like, let's move this last item back to somewhere to the top. Sometimes the scrolling works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it works it's just a nightmare. And okay, I want to move it down. Come on. Come on. So this is what I was speaking about. And now what I'm doing is that I move it to another column. Now, of course, it received that label, and it might have actually lost the configure label because I moved it to another column. So this label is removed. Kind of, I understand why, but still it's weird. And now I move it back. So basically, to move an issue, what I do is that I move to one column, then scroll up in the target column where I want it to move, and then move it there. I think you got it. This is extremely weird. I'm not thinking about, I don't want it to have any other state. I want it to prioritize within this column, and what I have to do is to move it somewhere else, get back here. So it's I often don't get this idea, and then just yelling at the screen that the scroller doesn't work, or why I don't have amazing shortcuts that Gyro has.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
And seriously, I regularly miss the Gyro shortcuts. Like, be able to move an issue up, be able to navigate this board with keyboard. So like, now I'm constantly hitting the up and down buttons, but what happens is that it scrolls instead of moving from one part to the next. No, I'm actually hitting the keyboard itself now. Like I'm hitting the down arrow, and I don't expect that. What I expect is that it selects the next item in the active column. If I go to the right, then it shouldn't scroll, but it should jump to the next column, and then I can move in that column again. There I can click enter and I don't know, change it, or it opens automatically when I hit enter or something like that. So, and to be able to move items within the columns and in the board with keyboard shortcuts, that would be great as well. And seriously, here I miss Gyra. That's the truth. So where I had ST and it just became sent to the top, SB sent to button, move it up, move it down. All these things were really great there. Because then I could even just click whichever letter is that moves me the specific card one up, and I can hit it 100 times. It's much faster than trying to drag and drop with this scroller. So that's the other thing. And the third is what you have seen before. That is when I move issues between these columns, especially, for example, here I am in the ready for development, and the team agrees that this should be a deliverable. So we move it to deliverable. And now what happened is that it's not ready for development anymore. And of course, I understand the logic what we have today, but this is not what my intention was. My intention was to add the deliverable label as well in this situation. And I have no idea how to do it on this board. Of course, I can go to the labels and edit, but that's not a pleasant experience as I have this board anyway in front of me. So these
it's almost like if not, it's almost like the logic should be if you're not moving between scope labels, it should be additive instead of a mutually exclusive sort of thing.
And when it's scoped, of course, it will remove one scope and add the next. But, so that's totally exactly what I would expect. And what I run into lately is that I would love to add more filters here. Because, like, what if I want this column to be group configured? That's fine, but even for a minute, let's exclude everything that's ready for development, because I'm really looking in prioritizing the planning. So what needs refinement? And this happened just today. What I had to do is that I excluded the ready for development label from the whole board, and then I had a shorter one here. So I would say these are the primary things that I struggle with. And of course, there could be a huge amount of automation. Like, oh yeah, one automation that we really miss is that actually the whole team works out of 2 boards.
That's what I was going to ask. You have your build board also, right?
Yes. And what would be really nice is to be able to move from this one to the next, keeping the prioritization. Because what I've learned 2 months ago, that every board has its own prioritization of issues, which means that we set everything up, we plan everything fine, deliverables are in priority order, and then the milestone starts, and our build board has a different ordering of the same issues. Totally unexpected, actually. So this
is your build board?
Yes, this is the build board.
So
now we are starting to use more and more workflow labels. So we might move to that. So
that's what I was going to ask if you don't have okay.
Yeah, but like we were a little bit sloppy within the team previously. That means that simply it might have been ready for development, but it never received an in-dev label or anything else.
That's so it just wasn't very reliable.
Yeah, and again, if the prioritization is messed up, having a deliverable and stretch separation is much better than stretch items coming first in the ready for development column just because this is different board. So, but here, one thing that could happen, no, that's that.
And you also changed the milestone on both of these as the milestone starts.
Yeah. And this is our setup today. So I can easily imagine that you would have different recommendations how to use these boards. We are really happy to have fixed boards for planning and for the build, because this way, as you can see, I actually have a shortcut here that just opens, if I don't mistype, the board. So it's
cool. So you kind of like bookmark both of these, and
yeah, and it's always the same link. So that's why it's great, and that's why I was thinking like, okay, this is the planning board. Once the planning is over, let's just switch the board setup itself so that this will be the build board for that milestone. But then I need a new link, a new board for the next milestone. And it's just easier to say that we have a board that's planning, a board that's build, instead of a board for 14.9, a board for 14.10. That would be the alternative that I see.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about the Jira experience, and they just have basically like a list-like view that's kind of segmented by sprint. And that's how they do it, instead of having two different views. But I actually like having the two separate views personally, like as a user, because it allows you to do like the dual track type of workflow, which is nice.
Yeah. And it's they have different columns. So like here,
exactly.
the UX can see that, okay, these are things that Viktor would love me to work on. And then they can decide whether they take something as deliverable. While here, everything starts with the deliverables. Everything started, it's ready for development. I don't care about planning, breakdown issues and those things.
Yeah, you're doing two different things on two different boards. But one thing that I think would be a nice, because that is similar to what I've seen with a lot of GitLab PMs, it would be nice to have some sort of board auto-generated if there's a milestone coming up or something like that, right? With all the right filters, and then once it's done, maybe it like gets removed somehow. But that would be a nice quality of life thing.
Yeah, I was thinking actually about this because I think that just now there is a Terraform resource for boards, and we manage the Terraform provider, so that's why I'm aware of that. So in principle, I should be able to manage the boards with Terraform. But the real question is that once I move from the planning to the build stage, how can I do that easily? So how can I make sure that the prioritizations of the cards remains as I had it before? Because that's why we do it today manually. That I don't even know if there is an API for that. I don't think so.
I think that maybe it's like the board columns and everything change as the iteration progresses in its life cycle. I'm just thinking like out loud, right? Because it's the same it's the same thing that you're doing. It's just like a different stage of 1410, right? Where it's no longer a plan. Now it's like execution. Yeah,
but then comes the issue that what I said before, that there are the issues that I don't want to be added to the 14.10 execution. So those should be left off, which actually could be just a set of filters. So it could just say that only ready for development and every other workflow label that comes after that is included in the filter. But today, such filters are not an option.
Yeah, there's something there about like automating this and making this easier. And to your point, like retaining the priority, because you already went through the effort during your planning to like define that.
You know what, now as we speak, I think what and I'm now just giving ideas, which I know that I shouldn't as a user.
No, it's fine.
But what I think would be my approach is two things. One, that I've heard here and there, that it would be nice to have a proper query language around GitLab, and like having a query language where I can express a setup that it's give me all the workflow labels, like here what I have, refinement and ready for development. And this is what the whole board should be filtered on. And then have another board which says that give me actually the same board, except the filter should be ready for development, in dev, in review, etc. So and kind of this would be one. So like one idea would be to have a proper query language, and the other is to clone the board, which would mean that it's the exact same board, the prioritizations are the same, just there is this extra level of restriction for for the filters applied, that what do I show there, or something along these lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because the query language is not expressive enough.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I think.
Yeah, there's some thinking going around for like more of a proper query language and more of like saving queries, right? And like rendering different views of that same statement, right? Whether it's in a board view or list view or like a roadmap view or so. Yeah, we've been thinking about that a lot too. But just to wrap this up and going back to the thanks, but it was good. It was fun to brainstorm out loud and hear about your process. To go back to sort of like the more immediate things, it sounds like keyboard shortcuts would be a huge win.
Yeah.
Changing the logic around moving items between columns, and basically not removing labels except if they're mutually exclusive, then remove them. Yeah. That I would probably need to validate with a few. I'm gonna see if there's an issue out there. I'd be surprised if there's not, and just see. I think it makes sense logically, like from my perspective, but I am interested.
The interesting thing there is that I think scope labels are a premium feature, which means, and I don't know whether boards are in GitLab free, but that means that if they are GitLab free, but scope labels are not, then every
people
free
are
users
using a scope labels.
Yeah. So
that
but
might be...
premium users might not want that functionality. What free users want in this situation?
That's a really good point, in that because scope labels are paid, not everyone's using them. Therefore, a lot of users are probably using normal labels as scope labels, where they expect them to be removed.
Yeah. But I totally agree with you that this needs more validation, because that was just my first.
And then there's a whole slew of basically product work that could be done around sort of like boards meeting these like defined workflows of like iteration planning, iteration execution, even like retros, right? Of like having like a view that's tied to a milestone that kind of changes as it goes to indicate sort of like where you are in the journey.
You know what? Now, as I think that, I can imagine that we could change our setup if there would be like another option would be that I create a bit.ly link and I have a board by milestone, and I just have a bit.ly that I change month after month to redirect to the current milestone, and then I can still have the static link, and because then it's the same board, so I kind of save the issue of moving between boards. So from GitLab's perspective.
Or I mean, GitLab could do that, right? Where it's like there's always a board for every active milestone, and there's always a board for
the next
milestone that's next.
Yeah, actually, that would be nice. That would be definitely nice. Yeah, I would love that.
The problem becomes like, how do we properly scope it? We've been talking a lot about like having an automation engine where like people could define those rules, right? Like create a label, create a board for every like group is what our logic would be, right? Like for every scope in a group, create a board for the upcoming milestone and this milestone. Yeah. It might be different from customer to customer, but we could at least have something there, and then they can edit it however, but that would be really nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, this was a really good conversation. Thank you for sharing your feedback.
Welcome. Thanks for asking.